I have one more place to take you this evening. We started with springtime in the Rockies, and we will end there. This is the Easter long weekend in northern Banff National Park. Despite the date, the snow lies deep. The only bunnies hopping about are snowshoe hares. But there are people here. Tents are being set up. A helicopter is coming and going. You can't just be dropped off by helicopter anywhere in Banff National Park. Such trips have to be approved by the park superintendent, and that hardly ever happens. Something special is going on here. As you can see, this is a very official-looking group. Not. But they are from all over the world, and every one of them has a PhD. They are scientists. And I won't keep it from you any longer. They are here to explore this cave. Castleguard Cave. That's Castleguard with a D on the end, not to be confused with Castlegar, no D, British Columbia. Castleguard Cave is Canada's longest, with 20 kilometers of known passages. The entrance is located near the south end of the Columbia Icefield in Castleguard Meadows. Remember that picture of Castleguard Meadows I showed you at the start of the show, when I told you that this talk would take you beneath the meadows? Well, now is the time. Castleguard Cave is not only the longest in the country, it's also a dangerous one to enter in the wrong season. The sign says, "Beyond this point, cave passages are liable to complete and sudden flooding in the summer." This is why cavers go to Castleguard in the winter. Some of the people in the first organized expedition, which was in 1967, had to wait several hours before the water receded enough to let them exit the cave. After they got out, the water level rose again, blocking the exit for many days. Close call. The sign continues, "Water rises rapidly up this pit and flows out of the entrance of the cave without warning. Flooding may occur in either sunny or stormy weather. There are no rescue personnel with knowledge of the cave, and no other entrances. Entry is illegal. Signed, Superintendent, Banff National Park." At the bottom of the sign, some wag has added, "Not only that, it's cold." Indeed, Castleguard Cave is cold, and it's cold year-round. Once you get a half-kilometer back into the cave, the temperature is a steady 2.4 degrees Celsius, barely above freezing. That's whether it's winter or summer. Just for comparison, the air temperature in much of Mammoth Cave, Kentucky, is 12 degrees C year-round. The flooding and the temperature notwithstanding, here's the real reason so little exploration of Castleguard Cave was done until the 1960s. About 150 meters in, you get to this 8-meter drop. Surprise! You have to break out the rope. I found that out when I was able to join an expedition into the cave in April of 1982. These photos and most of the others you're going to see are ones I took on that trip. Having rappelled down the first drop, you crawl on ice for about 350 meters. Even though the temperature in most of the cave is above freezing, it draws in air from outside all winter, so any water in the opening half-kilometer freezes solid. By the way, that's not me in the photo. It's Rick Cornelius, a park warden who came along with us for the first day of the trip. I could never grow a mustache as luxurious as his. Now, recall that the temperature of the cave is above freezing beyond a half-kilometer in. So instead of crawling along on solid ice, you have to wade. You have to wade in water with a temperature of 2.4 degrees, which is really cold. It's so cold that wading barefoot is excruciating. Plus, you can cut your feet on the rocks. So most of the cavers keep their leather boots on. Thus, their boots get soaked on the first day of the trip and remain wet for the duration. Stuff doesn't dry out underground. The humidity in Canadian caves is 100%. Some cavers bring wetsuit slippers to wear through this passage instead of their boots, which they tie together and hang around their necks. That's what I did. And to answer an obvious question suggested by this photo, yes, guys, the water does get deep enough. Farther on, there is no more water in the passage. But then we come to another difficulty. It's a vertical pit, 24 meters deep, and we have to go down it. The easiest way to descend something like this is to slide down the rope, as we did near the entrance. Not a problem for an experienced caver. But then, how do we get back up? As you can see, there's a ladder. It's made of wire with aluminum rungs. Cavers carry such ladders with them, rolled up and deployed as needed. We used caving ladders on this pit and the one right at the start. And by the way, this photo is one I did not take. It's from an excellent film about the cave that was made jointly by Parks Canada and the National Film Board of Canada in 1973. It's called Castleguard Cave, Challenge Under the Glacier. And you can watch it on YouTube. The passage continuing from that wide-open pit has this narrow spot. We are carrying everything we need for 3 days underground, and here we have to take our packs off and push them through ahead of us. It's what cavers call a squeeze. Creatively, this one has been named The Squeeze. It's sort of like naming the big rock near Okotoks, Alberta, the Big Rock. It's worth getting through the squeeze because the passage immediately beyond opens up and runs very straight for nearly half a kilometer. I think you would agree with me that the name of this passage is perfect. It's called the Subway. There's nothing else quite like it in the Canadian Rockies. Past the subway, though, Castleguard Cave gets serious. The passage narrows upward and downward from the middle. There's no real ceiling or floor. You work your way along the walls. After 2 kilometers of that, we were quite tired. And fortuitously, there it was, Camp 1, a more or less flat spot big enough for a dozen people to lay out their sleeping bags. They lay out their sleeping bags on a cold, muddy surface, but we each had come prepared for that, with an impermeable foam pad between us and the ground. These pads kept our bags dry, well, as dry as possible in that very high humidity, and they provided some additional warmth, too. Here is a caver at Camp 1 in his sleeping bag. The impermeable foam pad is too short, but he has extended it with a plastic garbage bag. However, he has no additional warmth from the knees down. Note the wet boots, which will not dry out overnight. His wet feet have dampened the end of the sleeping bag. Note also that water at 2.4 degrees C, is dripping onto his head. Why would anyone put up with this? All I can tell you is that he's British, and the British love to suffer. But hey, he's got a hot cup of tea. The next morning, my 2 friends, John Chaychuk on the left and Randy Spall on the right, are going to join me on a round trip of about 10 kilometers underground to the end of the cave and back to Camp 1. Well, it used to be thought of as the end of the cave. More has since been explored, but this will be enough for us. It's going to be a tough trip, and right away things get scary. No rope is in place to hang on to and make this section safer. It's called Holes in the Floor. Pretty good name, eh? And the floor itself is none too strong in some places in this cave. Further, the ceiling has its own hazards. We don't want to get one of those stalactites in the ear, nor do we wish to break any of them. Job 1 is to ensure our own safety, but job 2 is to protect the features of the cave. Incidentally, if a stalactite grows downward from the ceiling, what do you call a cave decoration that grows upward from the floor? That's right, a stalagmite. And here's the way a female caver once told me that she remembers which is which. When the mites go up, the tights come down. Some of the cave's stalactites are quite fragile. See the little flags on the ends of these? They point toward the entrance. This must have something to do with the flow of air, which is from the right in the winter and from the left in the summer. Those columns of calcium carbonate between John and Randy are known as the fish. We learned the name later on. At the time, we were calling them the petrified cavers. And on the cave goes, much of it like this. Some sections are quite lovely, such as this one, a passage called the Grottos. But at this point, all I was thinking was, man, I hope we get to the end soon, because we are going to have to retrace our steps to get back to Camp 1, and we are already tired. Soon after that, I realized that we were, in fact, quite close to the end. We came to a well-known landmark in the cave. It's a 20-meter pit, and you have to climb up it. There is a rope in place for this, and we used Jumar ascenders to climb it safely. But imagine what it felt like for the first person to encounter this. His name was Mike Boone. He was a British-Canadian caver who spent a week exploring Castleguard Cave in November of 1970. He was alone. Mike had been a member of an official expedition 2 years earlier. Owing to a personality clash with leader Derek Ford, Mike Boone was not invited to take part in further exploration. Ford's group had not reached the end of the cave, so Mike decided to come back on his own. He told no one where he was going. Mike had brought rope, pitons, and a hammer with him, just in case he needed them. And boy, did he need them here. Fortunately, none of the pitons pulled out under Mike's weight as he hung on them. A fall near the top would have resulted in serious injury, with no hope of rescue. Are you wondering whether Mike Boone was crazy? The answer is yes. At one point, he was hospitalized for paranoid schizophrenia. But he was also one of the world's great cavers. He died in 2014. And no, it wasn't in a cave. Mike did reach the end of Castleguard. He made it back out alive and returned to tell others what he had found there. But no one believed him. What he found was glacial ice. Castleguard Cave runs way out into the Columbia ice field. Rocks embedded in the ice grind away at the rock underneath. The glacier has cut its way down far enough to intersect this passage in the cave, which means that Randy, on the right there, is looking at the belly of the Columbia ice field. The spot is called the Ice Plug. No other cave in the world is known to end like this one does. It's a unique place, and we have worked hard to get there. So I set my camera on a rock and once again asked that well-known photographer, Self-Timer, to get a picture of us at the ice plug. As the flash went off, I thought, Ben, you're a lucky guy. You have stood on the roof of the Canadian Rockies at Mount Robson, and you have reached the basement of the Canadian Rockies at Castleguard Cave. And you know, I'm still at it. Here's a photo of me with Will, my elder son, the same person who skied the backcountry trails with me when he was 8. The date is September 18th, 2023. He's 56. I'm 77. We're on the summit of a peak that overlooks our homes in Canmore. He's a mountain guide. I'm an old man, and a happy one. Many thanks to Parks Canada for some of the slides you saw this evening. Thanks to all of you for coming to my talk, and good night.